Glenn Ford really hated him more than anyone else in the whole world. Glenn Ford was born Gwyn Samuel Newton Ford on May 1, 1916, in the pretty city of Quebec City, Canada. Glenn Ford grew up in a very simple, normal family with not much money. His family later moved all the way to sunny California, where his father got a good job as a railroad executive boss. Unlike many Hollywood stars who had everything easy from the start, Ford's road to becoming famous was slow, steady, and built mostly on strong discipline instead of shiny glamour and luck. He first got interested in acting back when he was still a kid in school, and later he joined a small local theater group in his town, practicing and learning his craft for many years before any big lights ever shone on him. Ford finally stepped into the movie world in the late 1930s when he signed a contract with Columbia Pictures, a studio famous at that time for making smaller, cheaper films instead of huge, expensive star pictures. But it was exactly at that smaller studio where Ford really learned the important basics of acting in front of a camera. He learned how to move in a smart, simple way, how to hold emotions inside without going crazy, and how powerful it can be to say very little but mean a lot. Those three things, small moves, calm feelings, and quiet power, became the special style that everyone remembered him for. His first roles looked promising and people noticed he had talent, but then World War II came and stopped everything for a few years. He served honorably and bravely in the United States Navy, and actually fought in real, dangerous combat battles out in the Pacific Ocean. That hard war experience changed the way he looked at life forever, and added a deep, quiet seriousness to every role he played later on. After the war finally ended, Glenn Ford came back home to Hollywood feeling more focused and ready than ever. The late 1940s and especially the 1950s became the golden years when he turned into a huge star. He became one of the biggest box office names, without ever depending on the usual flashy, pretty boy matinee idol tricks. His real breakthrough moment came in 1946 with the famous movie Gilda, where he acted opposite the beautiful and fiery Rita Hayworth. His dark, brooding, quiet style made a strong, exciting contrast next to Hayworth's hot, dancing, passionate energy. That film turned into a true classic that people still talk about, and Ford proved he could show big inner pain and struggle using almost no words at all, something very few actors ever learned to do so perfectly. All through the exciting 1950s, Ford showed amazing range and could play so many different kinds of characters really well. In those dark, shadowy crime stories called film noir, he was fantastic at playing good men who were torn inside between what they wanted and what was right. One of his strongest was The Big Heat in 1953, where he gave one of the most intense yet totally controlled performances anyone ever saw in that kind of tough movie. As the honest detective Dave Bannion, Ford showed a deep, righteous anger that burned quietly just under his calm face. He created a man whose strong sense of right and wrong never bent, even when violence, lies, and dirty corruption were everywhere around him. Around the same time, Glenn Ford also became one of the most loved and respected stars in Western cowboy movies, and he actually changed what a Western hero could look like. Instead of playing unbeatable, perfect cowboys who never doubted themselves, Ford often chose roles of older, tired men who carried heavy guilt, age, or mistakes from their past. His work as the clever outlaw Ben Wade in 3:10 to Yuma in 1957 is still called one of the greatest Western performances ever filmed. He played Ben Wade with such tiny, perfect touches, charming on the outside, very dangerous underneath, but also surprisingly human and thoughtful. His version of the bad guy wasn't just evil. He was someone who could stop, think about his life, and even show a little honor when you least expected it. That made the old simple good guy vs bad guy stories feel much more real and complicated. Ford was also surprisingly great in light comedies and sweet romantic pictures, always with perfect comic timing and a warm, friendly heart. In the Gentle Family movie The Courtship of Eddie's Father in 1963, he showed everyone a softer, kinder side, playing a nice widowed dad trying to find new love while raising his little boy with lots of care and real feeling. Being able to jump so smoothly between heavy drama, exciting action, sweet romance, and funny moments made him one of the most useful and loved stars Hollywood ever had. When the movie business started changing a lot in the 1960s and 1970s, Glenn Ford didn't fight it. He moved smoothly into smaller but deeper character roles. His days as the #1 box office king got quieter, but his acting actually became richer and more powerful. Well, he kept working steadily in both movies and on television shows, and people started praising him especially for roles that needed real-life wisdom, complicated emotions, and experience instead of just big muscles or action. One of his most touching late-career parts was playing Jonathan Kent, Superman's kind adoptive father, in the big 1978 Superman movie. Even though he only appeared on screen for a short time, Ford's gentle, wise, honest, and strong dad performance stayed in everyone's memory for years. People could really feel the quiet strength and good values he gave to young Clark Kent. For everything he gave to movies over so many years, Ford received lots of nice honors and awards, including a Golden Globe Award as Best Actor for his role in Pocketful of Miracles in 1961. Still, many people think his true greatest achievement wasn't any trophy. It was how his movies and his way of acting still feel fresh and real today. Lots of directors and younger actors have said Glenn Ford was a true master of realistic acting, someone who trusted quiet moments and silence just as much as spoken words, and who never pushed a scene too hard or too big. Glenn Ford's real life away from the cameras, especially all his marriages, was full of ups and downs and deep feelings, just like so many of the complicated characters he played so well on screen. Even though everyone saw him as a super professional, dependable, hardworking leading man, his love life showed a man who found it hard to balance being famous, chasing success, and feeling truly happy and close to someone. His first and most important marriage was to the wonderful dancer and actress Alina Powell, who was one of the biggest, brightest stars during Hollywood's golden age. Powell was loved all over the world as one of the greatest tap dancers in movie history, famous for her fast, perfect footwork, strong stage presence, and dazzling numbers in those huge, colorful MGM musicals. When Glenn Ford and Alina Powell got married in 1943, both of them were right in the middle of very important times in their careers. The marriage joined two strong, ambitious, talented people who really understood how tough and crazy fame could be. But they also had to deal with all the hard problems that came along with being stars. Together they had one son, Peter Ford, who was born in 1945. Later on, Peter followed both his parents into show business and became an actor and singer himself. For Glenn Ford, being a father was one of the most important things in his life, even though his busy filming schedule and constant travel kept him away from home more than he wanted. Friends who knew him and people who wrote his life story all said Ford loved Peter very much and felt so proud every time his son did something good. But the long hours on movie sets, weeks and months away from family, and the huge pressure on both husband and wife slowly started to pull them apart. Little by little, Ford and Powell grew emotionally distant, and their work pulled them in opposite directions more and more. Alina, who had stepped back from some of her own dancing career to take care of family, started feeling sad and disappointed about it. Meanwhile, Glenn's career kept climbing higher and higher through the 1950s, with one hit movie after another. Finally, in 1959, after 16 years of marriage, they decided to divorce. That breakup was a big turning point for Ford and started a long pattern of other marriages that never lasted very long and always felt unsteady. Ford went on to marry 3 more times, and each marriage showed he still wanted love and someone to share life with, but he also struggled a lot to make it last. In 1966, he married actress Katherine Hayes, who was best known for her work on television, especially playing big roles in popular soap operas. That marriage happened during a time when Ford himself was doing more and more TV shows, instead of just big movies. But even though they both came from the same acting world, they only stayed together for 3 years before divorcing in 1969. The short marriage showed that just having similar jobs wasn't enough to fix deeper differences and problems. Next, in 1977, he married Cynthia Hayward when he was already older and probably hoping for some calm and steadiness in the later part of his life. This marriage lasted longer than the two before it, 7 full years, until it ended in 1984. Even though it went on longer, friends said it still had lots of emotional ups and downs and hard times. By then, Ford was dealing with growing health troubles and the hard truth of getting older in a Hollywood that used to cheer for him every day. Those pressures, plus some old personal habits that were hard to change, all helped cause the marriage to break up. Ford's very last marriage was to Jean Baus in 1993, when he was already in his late 70s and moving slowly. He probably hoped this one would bring quiet companionship and comfort in his old age. Sadly, it turned out to be his shortest marriage of all, ending in divorce in 1994 after only a little more than 1 year. How fast that one ended showed how hard it really was for Ford to find lasting peace and balance in his heart, even after his famous movie days were over and he was retired. During his very long career full of so many different actors, there was one man from his own time who, according to stories and things Ford said later, made him feel a deep anger and dislike far stronger than just being annoyed. From what people remember and what Ford told friends, no other actor stood for everything he hated about the new Hollywood more than Tom Selleck. It wasn't jealousy over money or fame, and it wasn't personal meanness. It was, in Ford's own words, a big clash about values, how hard you work, and what acting is really supposed to be. I never hated a man just because he became successful, Ford reportedly said more than once. But I did resent what that kind of success started to stand for in the business. To Ford, who grew up in the tough old studio system where actors spent years doing tiny parts, signing long contracts, and working hard every single day to improve, Tom Selleck seemed to represent a newer, faster Hollywood that felt like it handed things out without the same effort. Selleck's quick jump to huge fame from the popular TV show Magnum, PI looked to Ford like proof that the industry now cared more about good looks, charm, and a cool image than real, earned depth. Ford always said struggle was like a necessary fire that makes you stronger. He had come from nothing, fought in a real war, paid his dues with small roles for years, and only then became a leading man. You learn humility when you fail over and over first, he once explained. You learn real respect when nobody notices you at all. But in his eyes, Selleck skipped that long, hard school of acting. He just walked onto the set already smiling big for the camera, Ford supposedly complained. That's not how we learned our craft back then. What upset Ford the most wasn't that Selleck was popular. It was how easily everyone accepted him as a serious, deep actor right away. Ford always believed real acting depth comes from inner battles, holding emotions back and quiet pain, not from looking relaxed and confident all the time. Everything about him was too easy, Ford would say. Too clean-looking, too perfectly polished. Real life doesn't shape a man like that unless he lets it happen. To Ford, Selleck's laid-back, easygoing manly style felt like he was acting the part of a man instead of really being one, and it missed the raw, tight tension Ford thought every great screen performance needed. There was also a bit of older generation feeling mixed in. Ford came from an era when screen men were usually shown as carrying heavy burdens, feeling torn inside and quietly hurting. Selleck's tall, athletic, super charismatic look felt to Ford like going backward to a simpler hero style, without any real weight behind it. He played heroes who had no scars at all, Ford said. And I've never trusted a hero who never got hurt. People who worked in Hollywood noticed that Ford got really irritated whenever anyone tried to put Tom Selleck in the same group as the classic leading men from the old days. To Ford, even making that comparison felt like an insult. You don't just inherit a legacy like it was handed to you, he said sharply more than once. You have to bleed and sweat and fight your way into it. He thought Selleck got some free help from people who were already nostalgic for the old-fashioned star type that Ford and his friends had worked so hard to create. But deep down under all the criticism was something even more painful, a feeling that he was being pushed out. Ford understood, even though he didn't like it, that Hollywood had moved on and no longer belonged to men like him. The business just stopped needing guys like us, he admitted quietly one time. Then it stopped even remembering why it ever did. In Ford's mind, Tom Selleck wasn't really the bad guy. He was just a living symbol that the whole game had changed forever. Even though his words sounded harsh, Ford never said Selleck wasn't professional. He shows up on time, he does his job, Ford would admit fairly. But that's not the same thing as carrying something real and deep inside you. For Ford, acting wasn't just pretending. It was like opening up your soul and confessing something true. And he felt Selleck never really showed enough of his true self on the screen. In the end, Glenn Ford's strong dislike of Tom Selleck wasn't about hate or evil thoughts. It was more about sadness and mourning for something lost. He was watching his own whole era slowly disappear while a new kind of star rose up. It wasn't really him I hated, Ford finally said in a quiet moment. It was everything that came after us. Through watching Selleck, Ford had to face the hard truth that Hollywood had kept moving forward without him, and no amount of old fame or respect could ever stop time from changing everything. By the time Glenn Ford finally walked away from acting in 1991, he had already lived many full, exciting lifetimes inside Hollywood. At 75 years old, he didn't retire because he stopped loving movies or because fans forgot him. He retired because his body was getting too sick to keep going. Decades of hard, long filming days doing physical action scenes and living under the constant heavy pressure of being a star had worn him out badly. Ford was suffering from serious heart trouble and blood circulation problems that made even normal days hard, let alone the tough work of acting. For a man whose whole life was built on discipline, showing up, and pushing through pain, deciding to stop was a very serious and private choice. He knew that trying to keep working in that condition would not only hurt his performances, it could even shorten his life. Even after he retired and stayed home, his health problems didn't go away or get easier. In the years that came next, He had several small strokes that slowly took more and more strength away from him and changed how he lived every day. Doctors called them minor strokes, but because they kept happening, together they made him much weaker over time. They left him more and more frail, made it hard to walk or move freely, and took away a lot of the independence he used to have. That was a huge change from the tall, strong, confident man everyone had watched on the big screen for so many years. His close friends and family said that even though his body was failing more each day, his mind often stayed clear and bright. He could still think deeply, make jokes, remember old stories, and sometimes show that same quiet, intense look that used to light up movie screens. As he got sicker and weaker, Ford chose to live very privately, staying far away from cameras, reporters, and crowds. The actor who once was one of Hollywood's most trusted and steady leading men, equally great as a romantic lover, a tough lawman chasing bad guys, or a complicated antihero, was now facing the normal weaknesses and struggles of very old age. But even then, he carried himself with real dignity and grace. He never asked anyone for pity or tried to make a big show about his problems. Instead, he picked a calm, quiet life at home, surrounded by the simple things he loved and the few people who really mattered to him. Glenn Ford died peacefully in his own home in Beverly Hills on August 30th, 2006, at the age of 90. His passing quietly closed the book on a whole big era of Hollywood history. It ended a career that stretched across more than 50 years and showed how much American movies changed and grew during that time. From dark film noir mysteries to classic cowboy westerns, serious dramas, light comedies, and everything in between, Ford left behind a lasting mark with acting that was always honest, never overdone, full of real emotion, and built on holding back just enough to make every moment feel true.